well, we could over here do this or could over here do this. Like, I think both are good. And I think what you have to do if you're a good general manager, which Adam Peters more than is you have to look at what's available to you. You have to look at the opportunities. All right, Commanders fans, what you got? Let's start off with Dennis. Dennis, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks. And maybe it's age, but I was telling them now. Yeah, I won money, so that helps. But the fact is that I'm an NFC guy. If the Commanders don't win it, then I would hope NFC East would win it. If NFC East doesn't win it, I would hope NFC would win it, with one exception. And guess who that is? Dallas.
I was going to go full Jimmy Johnson on you. I was going to be like, how about them Cowboys? But you didn't give me time. So, yeah.
Exactly right. Philly's a good team, and I love defense, too, and that was such a dominant defensive play. So I have a good vibe with it. I'm happy that an NFC East team won it. And aren't we the last team to have beaten them? I don't know for sure, but we might have been.
Not only was Washington the last team to beat Philadelphia this season, they were the only team after Philadelphia's bye to beat them. When Philly got DeJean back and made a couple of tweaks to their defense that went from like pretty solid to like historically top five. If you take away their first 5 games, which I know is not how this works, but like the rate at which they played for the final, 12 games, 13, 14, count the playoffs. That is a top 5 all-time defense. That is how good that defense was post-bye. And Washington not only was the only team to beat them, but really I feel like was the only team. There's a couple of teams that played them close, but they were more like 22-19 type of games. Washington put 30 on them. And I think that's something that certainly, you can be proud about if you're a Commanders fan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. As Dennis departs, we got one more line open. Let's go to DC. DC, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Great day, Craig, man. First, I want to say, man, get home safely, brother. And I was joyful that the Eagles won. I'm happy they won, but I wasn't joyful. I was more joyful seeing that they're the measuring stick now to win the Super Bowl. They're in our division. We played them well every game, even though they do cause us to have turnovers. So we got to protect the ball. And I know that we're going to do what we need to do in the offseason to beat them because they're in our division. I got a question for you also.
What's up?
I think you said what our most important thing we should go after this offseason is the D-line. Seeing how good their D-line is, do you still agree with that? Or should it be O-line that we look to bolster the most?
I mean, I think the good news is that you can do both. I think you need to do both in terms of, and then it comes down to like what's available to you. Like, I don't want to be like, you have to spend more on your offensive line, and then Myles Garrett's available, and it's like, oh, well, we didn't get up Myles Garrett because we signed some above-average guard.
In free agency, not just in free agency, but also in the draft. Like,
sure,
I understand if the best player is available at 29 and it's a DN, we should get him. But
right,
I think our focus should be a little more on the O-line because their D-line is so dominant, and they're losing a few pieces, which is good too.
For sure.
I don't know how many they'll be able to sign.
Yeah, I think DC, you've hit on the conundrum though. Do you try to prepare to defend against that, right? Or in this case, offend against that? Do you bulk up your offensive line to deal with their defensive line, or you go, oh, that's a good formula. What if we could do that? Right, because I could make the argument either way. Intellectually, that's not very hard for me to do.
Right.
Phyllis, if I want to put my philosopher hat on and be annoying about it and be like, well, we could over here do this or could over here do this. Like, I think both are good. And I think what you have to do if you're a good general manager, which Adam Peters more than is you have to look at what's available to you. You have to look at the opportunities. And as I'm starting to dive, like I've dipped my toe in on the draft to at the very least, like be aware of kind of the contour of this draft. There is a ton of defensive line talent available. I think it is far more I don't want to say far more likely because there's actually like a couple of good tackles that are going to be available at the end of the first round. So, but there's definitely going to be defensive line talent available to you at 29. And if the best player on your board is an edge or a defensive tackle, you take that guy. You take the best player available to you because of the state of your roster. Like really outside of Terry at wide receiver 1, and that, I guess unless Jamar Chase becomes available, you're not upgrading at wide receiver 1. You're not upgrading a quarterback. Good there. Real quick, DC, and then I promise I'll let you finish here. Outside of those two positions, there is not a position on this team that you couldn't tell me the best player available at 29 is like free safety. Like Quan Martin, I'm perfectly fine with Quan Martin starting. If you tell me there's a stud first-round free safety that's the best player available by far on your board at 29 and they take him, I'm fine with that. Like that is the state of this roster. They need stars wherever they can get them.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I trust Adam Peters with that. But being that you said D-line, Kansas City showed their D-line played well, but it wasn't enough to stop them. But they couldn't protect Mahomes at all. You see what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And like the thing is, whatever you do, you have to get it right. But I think also schematically, like Washington does some good stuff. I mean, normally Andy does too in terms of protecting Patrick. Historically, Kansas City's problem in many ways was they put Joe Thuney, an all-pro left guard, out at left tackle, and he wasn't good at left tackle in that game, which means not only are you worse at left guard, you're worse at left tackle than you should be. And by the way, for Kansas City, they've spent 2 picks in a row, a third rounder 2 years ago and a second rounder this year on left tackle, and neither of those guys have panned out yet. So I think you also have to think about this, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that second round pick that they took last year, Kingsley Suamatia, like I'm not going to tell you that he's a bust. What I can tell you is he's raw and wasn't ready to play this year, which you probably should have known coming in if you're Kansas City. So I think the other part of it too is how do you address these positions? Because if you're worried about Philly's offensive or defensive line now, and your solution to that is the draft, rookies. Like, I know our brains just got broken because Jaden just did a million things that it wasn't supposed to happen for a rookie. But, like, rookies aren't typically good in their first year. So I do think that, in the draft, like attacking D-line, a position that maybe translates a little faster off into the NFL than offensive line, and maybe attacking the offensive line to shore it up a little bit in free agency might not be the worst play. But, again, it comes down to what's available on each market, free agency and trade and draft. And I think that your head's in the right place for sure in terms of both lines of scrimmage being probably the top 2 priorities in whatever order you want to put them.
All right, brother. Have a great day, man. Appreciate you.
You too. Appreciate that, DC.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.